Thanks for I think I already feel like here at home, so I think we're gonna keep this venue. Thanks again. All right, welcome everyone. Again, my name is Mehmet. I am the one of the co-organizers of the Brighton Data Forum alongside the Oscar and Ashley. So a little bit about the forum. So Brighton Data Forum founded almost 8 years ago in 2018 by Oscar, and it is running since then for each 2 months. So we are trying to run event at the end of the last Wednesday of the each odd month. So the forum is organized for the giving talks around the data, tech, AI, or anything related. But the purpose of it, not only organizing an event, it's also bringing together a different audience from the professionals, academics, students, and also learners. So it was great to see a lot of new faces alongside all the loyal ones. So, but we are not only gathering in here for each 2 months, we are also keeping connections in our spiritual center, which is Slack. In Slack, we have a dedicated channel for the Brighton Data Forum. Feel free to scan the QR code so we can keep the conversation in there and also, discuss everything, whatever you have. So if we want to keep the communication with others, just try to scan the link and then you will be part of the amazing group. I think at the moment we got almost 1,500 members in the Brighton Data Forum, and I'm kind of sure 1,000 of them are active in the last 1 year, which is an amazing number. All right, I think everyone scanned the code, or should I wait? Cool. And this amazing forum wouldn't be happening if we don't have supporters. So when it comes to supporting this kind of events, not only Brighton Data Forum, but all the amazing meetup groups, there was one umbrella organization called Silicon Brighton. So Silicon Brighton basically supports the different meetup groups in the Sussex. And as you can see, there are almost 30 different meetup groups. And they are also trying to help to organize the events and also sponsoring our events. So thanks for being all the time alongside with us. And these are the sponsors of the Silicon Brighton. So, and as you see, there are almost hundreds of them available. But if you want to sponsor of it or make any collaboration with Silicon Brighton, I think Steve is somewhere in this room, but I couldn't see him at the moment. But just give us a shout or Steve directly, so they will try to correspond your questions about it. And here is the funny part. So I'm sure some of you already made the Evolve 25 last year in the July, so it was amazing. And it's happening again in this June, at the end of the June actually, and this time it's happening in the Brighton Center, which is a more spacious venue than the last one. And you know what? For the loyal Brighton Data Forum attendees, we have a special discount until end of this month. And if you just scan this code or put the Brighton Data Forum when we are checking out, you got a 50% discount for the event. So don't miss that one. All right. Silicon Brighton is a big supporter of our community, but it is not the only one. When it comes to our main specific sponsor, it is Rhythm Analytics. So thanks to them, and Mark Rhythm is available here. Yeah, and thanks to them, and maybe we should give them a warm welcome again. Mark, do you wanna come and? All right. Thanks to them, we're gonna have we can provide refreshments and drinks for all our events. And thanks to their continuous support, probably we will do for our next couple of events as well. So I think they deserve a warm applause from the audience. So let's give them a warm hands. So a little bit about rhythm analytics. So they are based in Brighton, uh, and they are supporting the business and also non-profit organization as like us in the UK as well. And they are a full stack analytics company, and they are not only operating in the UK, they are also operating around the EU and North America. And if you want to have any kind of data project, they will be definitely help to kickstart and modernize your data strategy. And at the moment, they are partners with those companies, the Google Cloud, DBT, Snowflake. And if you want to find more, I think it is very terrible at there, but it is just over here. And you can just, go to the rhythmanalytics.com and you will find more. But there is always more. They have also doing that some kind of collaboration with the other organizations in the world. And this is one of the samples of them from the Pleo, and they help the company on the modern, scalable, and user-centric data foundation. So if you are interested the job or things done by the written analytics, I will definitely recommend visit to their website. And that's not the end of the story. Again, they have also amazing blogs, podcast on streamable from the Spotify. I'm not sure on the YouTube, but yeah, it is available on all the streaming platforms. And they have also open source codes available in the GitHub. And they're also sponsoring in the different meetup groups like us, like in this case, London Looker meetup. So thanks for supporting events like this, and I think they deserve one more. Warm applause. All right, that's so everything from the intro. So I think we can start listening about our speakers. So our first speak about the agriculture. I'm not sure you have any family member which is dealing with the farmer or farm. Oh, great. My grandfather is also a farmer, so yeah, we have a common point at the moment. And everyone is complaining about the groceries recently in all around the world. I'm not sure Sulaiman will help to decrease the price of the groceries in the UK or in the world, but I'm sure he has some fancy data techniques or methods to increase the efficiency and cultivation in the agriculture. And here is a punch. He is not using tractors or agricultural device. He is using some data and code. So, Sulaiman, it's over to you.
Whoa, you're putting me under the pressure. Hi, everyone. My name is Sulaiman, and I work at a startup. It's called Gardin, and we solve agriculture with machine learning and AI applications. So if you, just like Mohammed said, if you go to the supermarket, to any chain in the UK or in Europe, likely any high value crop that you see, whether it's a leafy or the strawberries or tomatoes, 100% it's grown in a closed environment system, a glass house or a greenhouse. And this is not just the recent years, it's been running for quite decades. Um, and greenhouses and glasshouses exist over 119 countries. And China is the predominant country in globally. It accounts for over 60% of the greenhouse area globally. And then we have some spots in Italy, Spain. The Netherlands is a major player in Europe, and a bit less in the UK. um, we also have some hotspots in the US, Mexico, and South America in general. And McKinsey did a really good Farmers Insight report in 2024. And they asked farmers in the US, Mexico, China, India, and Europe about the top 3 challenges that they're facing today. So the top 3 that emerged from this study: increased input prices. Like Mohammed said, it's the groceries are going up as well, based on those challenges. Extreme weather events and the commodity prices such as labor costs and the fertilizers. And then they asked the same farmers whether they will adopt any technology to use and increase the yield and decrease the prices. And if not, what are the barriers to adopting any new technology in their glasshouses or greenhouses? So the top 5 answers came: unclear ROI, the high implementation and maintenance costs, the lack of scale, because most of those new technology devices are work in labs, but they are not designed to work in huge greenhouses that extends to hectares. Time-consuming setup. Most of the farmers, they don't have the technical capacity. They do have plant scientists, but they don't have any technical support. And that's where we come in. We talked to farmers. We visited greenhouses in the Netherlands, in the UK, and we are addressing the challenges and the barriers that they face. We empower farmers to grow more nutritious food and scale it from there for production. And we will see later how we do that in the presentation. I just wanted to explain the unique part about what we provide is that it is flexible. But the full stack that we have, the hardware, which is the device, and the software, they adapt to different setups: greenhouses, vertical farms, and the seed breeding operations. I need to play the video. So this is the sensor that we install in the greenhouse. It spans 360 degrees, tilts 180 degrees, and it measures effectively and directly the crops around it. We install multiple devices in a specific in the greenhouse. It depends on the size and the length of the pond. And the connectivity, or the connection between the cloud and the device, happens first by doing the measurements and the farm, and then the sensor process those measurements locally and then upload it to the cloud. And then we have a series of functions and steps on the cloud that translate this raw data into insights and matrix, and then we share them in the form of a dashboard to the farmer. Another unique point about what we provide to the farmers is that the device is plug and play. You only need a Ethernet cable, and it's a PoE, so it's power over the Ethernet cable. So we only uses the power that is coming from the Ethernet to power the camera, the sensor, and 2 motors, one servo at the top and another servo for the tilt. Another point is that the device comes out of the box with two pieces, the base and the device itself. And the base is connected to it's mounted to the platform, and then the sensor is plugged into the base. What we measure is the chlorophyll fluorescence using the optical technology, and we use computer vision and machine learning to process the images that we capture, um, plant by plant and crop by crop. And we also measure the efficiency of the photosynthesis, which is quite a unique point in the agriculture sector. We cover up to 3 meters away from the sensor, 360 degrees, so that's around 9 meters in terms of the area. We can measure hundreds of plants and take hundreds of measurements per hour. And we also cover the entire height of the canopy, so we go through the depth. Another thing, it's a bit more technical, or it's a bit more academic in this slide, is that we don't depend on the direction of the sun or during the day, or whether it is covered by clouds or not, because we depend on our own technology that measures the excitation of the light source from each leaf of the plant. And this one is the dashboard. We provide 4 main metrics to the farmers based on the pond or the line that the sensors operate in. We have health, efficiency, balance, and the productivity. And we also have an alert system we send to farmers whenever there is a stress detected at the canopy level. Last year, we participated in Autonomous Greenhouse Challenge, and we were able to run a greenhouse autonomously for 70 days, and we outperformed experts by 30% without using any human. And the challenge was to grow cherry tomatoes and full autonomy from potting to harvesting. And the experiment was done in the Netherlands. And we did that by using a sensor, the predictive control, and a simple reinforcement learning to learn from the inputs and adjust it based on the outputs, basically to adjust the light, temperature, and CO2. And the results are 45% above the industry average, and around 200,000 euros additional value per year. And it was the shortest crop cycle achieved for cherry tomato, which was 69 days. Another example that we have with another client running on strawberries, we achieved almost 5 times ROI by detecting stress 30 days before it was viewed to the human eye, or 30 days before the humans can see the stress on strawberries. And that prevented the farmers from downgrading from class 1 to class 2, which is something in the markets, agriculture market. And that means a 40 to 60% prevention of loss. We also achieved 5 to 15% of yield increase for another client called from Boya, and it was growing lettuce. And we also prevented 10% of loss from dipilcoron on strawberries. At Gardin, we think the future of agriculture is plant-driven because, well, first, in traditional farming, it's climate control, but we do crop control. And traditional farming, usually it is reacting to visible stress, but we prevent that before the symptoms happen. Farmers usually guess the optimal conditions, whereas we know the plant really well in real time. And usually with those massive greenhouses and vertical farms, they one size fits all. They apply something, they apply it to the whole vertical farm or the greenhouse. Whereas we know each plant and the health of each crop daily. Why the plant level intelligence matters now? It's a 200 billion market. The energy costs are going up, so any savings will go into the consumer pocket. There are labor shortages, so any autonomy will be appreciated, and all the things that is happening with climate change. So if any detection of stress, decreasing in light will be appreciated by the farmers. And at Gardin, we deliver on this unique point, a direct, measurable plant intelligence measurements at the commercial scale that can just expand. And yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Thanks, Sulaiman, for amazing presentation for using advanced data techniques for such a traditional industry, actually. So before going ahead to questions from our audience, is there any question from our live audience? There is. Any question? No. From audience, online audience? Can you check the comments? All right, great. Sorry for that. All right. Can I see the hands if you have a question? Okay, I can. Sorry, Dominic. I just go with the ladies first.
Yeah, thank you for your talk. Very interesting. I remember the different metrics that you were showing. I think health, and then 2 or 3 other ones. And I was wondering, I'm curious about the science behind all of that. Like, what models do you use? What features? Can you maybe tell a bit about the machine learning model building process? And what you're using to predict your different metrics.
Yeah, sure. Unfortunately, I cannot say a lot about the equations used, but we're using photosynthesis equation, so it's online, and we're using the efficiency of that. But unfortunately, I cannot say anything more than that. I have an NDI. But yeah, we use machine learning to learn from the current data that we have, and based on that, we project. And that's how we prevent these stress levels, because we can monitor in real time what's happening at the plant level. Sorry.
Yeah, thank you. Very impressive, must say. Just a simple question to clarify. That dashboard you showed, that's actually monitoring each individual plant.
It's measuring a set of plants.
Okay, like a line.
Yeah, okay. So multiple ones, but you can see them individually based on the tilt and because we have the angle, and we know each angle of each plant and how much the distance from the sensor. So
you're actually able to monitor each plant.
We do.
To know the stage of.
We actually capture.
The health of this.
We actually capture at least an image a minute for each leaf of each plant. Okay. And that's how we are able to translate all of this data using computer vision mainly to translate it into the main matrix.
Okay, thanks.
Hi there, thank you. I just wondered about your organization and in terms of the breakdown of people and types of brains, types of people, agricultural type people, data people. Yeah, could you tell us a bit more about the sort of makeup and how the idea came?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. So the organization of the startup itself is that we have plant scientists, so PhD level employees that goes into nitty-gritty things and validate what we do in the machine learning and data science. We also have our research facility. So we do actually have a greenhouse set up. We run our own experiments, validate them, and then we deploy them into our clients. Yeah, but it's generally a mix of customer people, machine learning and data science, and plant scientists. But the plant science team is the core team at the startup.
Hi. So when you said that when we compare your yield to the experts, you mentioned that the yield was 30% better. Your yield was 30% better. Can you tell me which metrics you compare your yield on the experts, and which department benefits from it? Like, is it ready to sell, or the quality of the product is better than them, or how does it work?
100%. So that challenge, sorry, I'll go back to the challenge. Yeah, that challenge was running 2 separate greenhouses at the same time. One with experts, where they monitor the plants and do the traditional farming, and the other one was autonomously running using our own sensors. And it was a simple comparison between the yield of the two at the end of the crop harvest, after crop harvesting, basically. And then assuming that we have roughly 2 euros per kilo. And based on that calculation, we calculated the number of the 200,000. Yeah.
For your machine learning models, how important is what kind of plant it is? You say you've been working with the strawberries, there's 12 cherry tomatoes, lettuce.
Yeah.
Does it work with any plant in general, or you have like some specific plants that your model works better on, or is there only limited in plants that your models can predict health for?
Yeah. When we started, I think we started with tomatoes mainly, and when we expanded into lettuce and tomato and strawberries, it didn't work the same. So we actually do our own training on our own images from each crop, and based on that, we expand and improve the models. But yeah, it doesn't work. It's not a one model that fits all. Each has a different shape of the leaf, and each plant has a different growth stage. So tomatoes is 69 days, but lettuce is 21 days. So you need to adjust for the growth between the different plants.
So slowly adding more and more plants to your collection.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. We actually have more data on plants than anyone else in the world. So we collect, till last year, we collected more than 10 million data points from all the plants that we cover.
So part of your job is just sitting, observing lettuce.
No.
No.
I wish that would be
recording data from lettuce. Right, that's it.
Cheers. So I'm going to ask 1 or 2 questions depending on the time. A bit of background. I know nothing about farming, but in my family on my mother's side is 4 generations of farmers.
Yeah.
Okay, so I've been stuck in a bit too many conversations on the topic. One of the things that my relatives talk about constantly is seeds. And I noticed that you didn't mention seeds in your first slides.
Yeah.
They seem to talk about seeds all the time.
Yeah, 100%. Because we operate transplant, after transplanting. So the farmers have their own seeds, and we don't know the recipe that they're using, because it's also for them, it's a private recipe that they want to protect, and other competitors shouldn't know about what type of seeds they're using. So we take it from the transplanting to harvest.
I was just thinking that one of your first slides, when you were saying that the topics that the farmers were talking about, there were a bunch of topics, but seeds wasn't one of them. And I was wondering, is that just because of the context? Then?
Just because of the context.
Okay,
but yeah,
perfect.
it's a completely different route, and it's very complicated.
Second question. Having grown in this type of family,
I know that they can be very conservative and a very nasty audience. How is it here in Europe, working with farmers?
It's a tough market because like you said, traditional farming been running for 4 or 5 generations for certain farmers, so it's really difficult to break in. It's a quite conservative community. Actually, in the report, they also mentioned that farmers in the US are more open-minded to adopt new technologies than the ones in Europe, UK, or even in China. So that shows how the mentality makes also difference in this scenario, and how we convince them with ROI, with examples from previous clients and the ROI that we achieved. And then actually, an important point is that most of the clients that we got is not by marketing, it's by word of mouth. It's by farmers telling other farmers that, hey, we're using Gardin and we achieved double or triple and we saved 20% energy. And in the Netherlands, especially, it's an important topic. Usually they discuss it in a pub or something, and then people just hear about it and then they reach out. So zero marketing, it's just more of word of mouth.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Andres, for question. There's a question from online. Okay, sorry. Do you mind reading it loud?
Yeah, of course. How did the tomatoes taste?
Really great. Really great.
Is there a benchmark for that flavor?
There is.
Really?
I'm not an expert about it. I just
cool.
eat.
I understand your product is this dashboard, and I'd be interested in how this dashboard is then applied to the actual farming. It's not within the scope of your company, I understand, but for me, that's the missing link.
Yeah, so we do. It's actually a good point, because the farmers are not technical and they're not very active online, or they don't check things quite often. So what we do is that we send them alerts via WhatsApp. We also send alerts via email, and we do have a team that sits with the farmers and go through the dashboard and what each metric means. But mostly, it's also seasonal. It depends on winter and summer. So in summer you have to apply shading, for example. So we have the plant scientists scheduling calls with the farmers and telling them the plan and the preparation for summer. And in winter it's the opposite. You need to increase the light, and quite often those changes makes the plants stressed without the farmers knowing, just because it's a plug and then they turn on the lights. But then we can measure that through the camera and through our sensors. So we send them alerts immediately and say, you need to decrease the light and increase CO2, etc.
So following up, in your challenges, you had 70 days of plant growth without human intervention.
Yeah.
Would your system be coupled to some automated? Yeah, during the challenges, you had 68 or 70 days plant growth without human intervention.
Yeah.
And was your system then coupled to some automated feeding system?
Yes, 100%. It was coupled to another autonomous feeding system that controls the temperature, water, CO2. But that's a completely different integration. But yeah, that's a good integration. Yeah.
I just had a quick question. You mentioned that when you compare, you had 2 identical experiments where you noticed a 30% improvement in yield. But the best case study you highlighted was a 15% increase in the yield. Do you think there was some sort of bias as well in the comparison?
Yes, but also it's different. It's a different crop. It's a different seeds as well. It's a completely different environment. But the first one, it's a tomato, but the second one is a strawberry. So it's a completely different crop. But we do have sort of bias as well between not just the two types of crops, but also two different companies, because the setup is different, the distance is different, the type of technology they're using is different, the type of light they're using also depends on the area. So all of these could vary by the country and by the farm itself.
Okay, but the 30% improvement, that was completely controlled, like both of them was done by your company, or was that compared to another farmer?
Yeah, both of us. Yeah, both of them. Both of them controlled by us,
Okay,
but one with the autonomous, the sensor, and the other one without.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that was a quite interactive session, actually. I wasn't expecting
was
that
great.
amount of questions. It was great to see that, yeah, Q&A session, but I think we have some boundaries in terms of timing. I think Sulaiman is staying for after presentation. So if you want to have a conversation with him on this topic or anything else, maybe we can, yeah, you can join in us in the pub, so we can keep the conversation. So let's give him another, yeah, warm hands. So
Thanks so much.
thanks, Sulaiman. So, sorry, was it me? Ah, great. So tonight is not ended. We have another speaker, actually. So when I was in the high school, yeah, before, I mean, long time ago, the LLMs, I was kind of scared of and one day the AI or computers are gonna steal our jobs and we're gonna be all unemployed. But the more I use the LLMs recently, I started to feel like, no, that stupid thing cannot steal my job. Definitely. But that's my impression, and we are not sure whether it is at that stage or not. So I think next speech will be about where are we in the state of AI, and how can we measure the success of AI. So over to you, Dave. Thanks.
That's exactly what this talk is about. So Oscar contacted me 2 or 3 weeks ago, said there was a spot coming up. And I just listened to an interview by Gary Marcus saying essentially that large language models, let's read the quote, large language models traffic only in the statistics of language without explicit representation of the facts and explicit tools to reason over those facts. He also said that the benchmarks are contaminated and they're not very useful. Essentially that these LLMs are a bit more superficial than others might claim. And of course, and I wanted to investigate this. And on the other side, we have people like Sam Altman saying, we're now confident we now know how to build AGI. And Dario Amodi, I'm saying that wrong, aren't I? Amodi, you know, we can see AI systems that are broadly more capable than humans in a few years. I mean, in some ways, they are more capable than humans, I would say at the moment. But he really believes that AGI will come in 2 or 3 years' time, actually. And then the other sort of area that's related is are we in a bubble? Is this bubble going to burst? So I'm just going to read you this quote by Jeremy Grantham. It's a good podcast, this, if you've got time to listen to it. I think the probabilities that AI will not bust are slim to none. It meets every condition of the railroads and the internet. It's a powerful idea that's attracted everybody's money. So what he's trying to say here is actually, quite often with bubbles, the issue isn't that the idea is a bad idea. Often the problem is that the idea is a great idea, like the internet, like railroads. They're still here today, right? But what happens is that everybody jumps in, they spend a bit too much money, a bit too soon, and then the revenues don't come quickly enough. And that's what causes the bubble. So that's the first topic we're going to talk about. I got this the wrong way around, haven't I? Okay, so first of all, I'm just going to compare OpenAI to Netflix. Now, I know Netflix is not an AI company, but the reason I want to compare them is they're basically the same size in terms of their valuation, about half a $500 billion, right? They've got similar-ish revenues, 45 billion for Netflix, 20 billion for OpenAI. One company is massively profitable, the other one is massively loss-making. So what's going on here? Well, Netflix is a more mature business. You know, it's had its growth stage, it's achieved a dominant position in the market. But really, the reason why OpenAI is not really on track to be a profitable company in the next 2 or 3 years is because it's investing massively in infrastructure. Lots of CapEx spend down here. So on the other side, you see it's sort of, if you like, BAU sort of costs, which would be the inference compute, which I believe is, the spend when you make an API call, and the R&D. But really, it's over here, the infrastructure costs are ballooning. They want to become not just a company that has an AI product, but they want to be, they want to be a cloud provider, an AI cloud provider. And the issue they've got, I mean, don't take these numbers too seriously, is that in order to justify that spend, their projected revenues, they're exponential. And I think it's a big problem in the next 2 or 3 years. If they don't achieve those sort of revenue numbers, we might see a bit of a deflation in the market. And you can sort of contrast that to Anthropic, actually. So these are some figures for Anthropic. Many of you probably use their products and might be a big fan. But actually, their projected sort of cash burn to revenue is actually, so they're burning 33% more than they gain in revenue. But in 2 years' time, they're expecting to break even. In contrast, OpenAI, their sort of cash burn is just increasing and increasing and increasing. So that's my first point. Then the second point, we're going to come to this concept of linear scaling. And this is basically the idea that for LM models to continuously improve, it really is quite a simple case of just increasing the compute. So this is an empirical finding here, right? Doesn't have to be the case, but compute is increasing by 4.4 times per year at the moment. So a big increase every year. And the basic idea is that when you increase the network size, you increase the data that you're putting into your network, and you increase the compute and the compute time. Together, bigger means better. And that's the basic principle that these people are chasing. And that's the reason why companies like OpenAI are not just content to try and reach profitability. They want to build this ability, increase their compute. And it's because of this idea of linear scaling. Okay, so what is this idea of linear scaling? Well, we've got a quote here from Dario Ahmed, and he says, "With nothing but inference to tell us that the next 2 years aren't going to be like the last 10. But I've seen this game enough times, I've seen this movie enough times to believe that scaling is just going to continue. We're going to get to expert and PhD level, and the next few points on the line will exceed human capacity." Okay, so what is the intuition behind linear scaling? Now I take this with a bit of pinch of salt, but this comes from Dario Ahmed's sort of intuition. And he talks about this 1 over F distribution. Those of you that work in vision science, some of you might be familiar with this, but this is the notion that in natural environments, you have this, consistently you see this 1 over F distribution. And it basically means that there's overlapping structure of increasing scale. It's common across many natural systems, so noise, vision, and he's arguing that it's common to many other systems. And basically, when you scale up the network, it can pick up the relationships at a higher scale and between the scales. And that's his simple idea. Take it with a pinch of salt. He says we should as well. For example, for language, within a sentence, you have a grammatical structure. Then you have structure of a sentence, then a paragraph, then a narrative and a story. Skip, 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 and then you get to logic, reasoning, intelligence. And that's the basic idea. Now, he acknowledges that there are many what he calls tweaks that occur in the model to allow linear scaling to continue. Tweaks may well do a lot of work there, but this is his basic argument. Bigger is better. It's as simple as that. Now, when could linear scaling come to an end? Well, one idea is that we might run out of useful data. So in this figure here, you see this is the data that models are sort of sucking up. And then this green line up here is a sort of estimated limit of data. We're talking about text only in this case. Now, originally when this figure was produced, actually, they said 2024 was when we're going to run out of data. Well, if we look at this figure, it's going on to 2028 at least. They've still got more data to suck up, essentially. Now, these things are hard to define. There's lots of problems with data. There's problems with quality, there's problems with repetition, there's problems increasingly with AI slop. But, you know, there will be a limit at some point of just sucking up sort of the prose, the text that humanity has produced. There are ways to get around this, of course. You can create synthetic data. That's particularly easy on sort of closed loop systems, programming mathematics, where you sort of can give it the answer and you can just allow, you know, because you can do the maths, you can provide the answer, you can create lots and lots of data, the same with programming. Adversarial systems is also another way. So that's when you get one LLM to talk to another LLM. But, you know, this is one of the potential limits to linear scaling that we should be aware of. Now we're coming to the critique provided. This critique, so Gary Marcus is from the cognitive science area, and sort of people from cognitive science, psychology, philosophy, they're the most critical people. They get a lot of criticism from that section. So the basic argument is that LLMs often learn superficial relationships, but not the underlying structure of the problems. So these are the sort of arguments that people come up with. Actually, the vast number of parameters used in the fits allow for shortcut learning. For instance, that's sometimes just learning the answer, but not learning how you get to the answer. Actually, that's a human problem. We can do that as well. Another criticism is, unless the learning is deeply embodied in a coherent world, learning is superficial. For example, as we grow up as a baby, to a child, to an adult, we exist in a world that has certain physical properties. You know, down is normally down and the walls are solid, and these physical laws are adhered to in the world we exist. And that allows us to learn a more coherent intelligence than arguably the LLMs pick up. And I think that argument has some truth as well. Then another couple of criticisms are narrowly defined benchmarks encourage superficial rather than general learning. And equally that benchmarks are often contaminated. And that's simply the idea that we're testing on a benchmark, but actually the LLM's literally been trained on that benchmark because it's publicly available. So we'll explore these critiques a little bit. So there's millions of examples of where LLMs get stuff wrong. And you'd have experienced this in your coding as well. Here's one example. It's from 2024. I can't get the LLMs to repeat this, but nonetheless, I think it's illustrative and it's interesting. So when they asked, it was ChatGPT, I think, who is Tom Cruise's mother? They said Mary LaFeiffer 79% of the time. But if they flipped the question on its head and they said, who is Mary LaFeiffer's son? It would only say Tom Cruise 33% of the time. So therefore, it's not sort of understood this relationship, you know, between a son and a daughter. And of course, back to the embedded point, as we're growing up, and if you're lucky enough to have a mother and a father, you know, that relationship is just, it's always there, right? You understand that I'm my father's son and vice versa. Actually, I think this is, when I showed this to my wife, I sort of practiced earlier today with my wife. She pointed out, well, that makes sense, right? Because on the internet, who's asking who Mary LaFeiffer's son is? People are going to be asking who Tom Cruise's mother is, right? Because they know Tom Cruise. That's how it's going to be. So you can see that in this case, possibly historical case now, that it's picked up on those statistics. And I think that's quite convincing, sort of, that these models can be quite superficial in how they learn. So inconsistency. These are non-determinate systems. So sometimes if you give the same stimulus, the same question, the same prompt, they might give you two different answers. Now, online, people often mention there are technical reasons for this, such as floating points or batch processing. I don't know those technical details, but I think it's somewhat missing the point, right? Ideally, you want these systems to be coherent in the face of noise, right? If we took that network and we added noise to the system artificially, we'd want to, you know, do some kind of equivalent noise experiment and see what level of noise can it handle till it starts changing its answer. Well, not much, right? And this tells you that often it doesn't need much noise. So yeah, and other examples, many other examples. Small changes to the input or relevant text at the bottom should not affect the outcome, ideally, for these systems to be reliable. So when I started this talk, I was sort of more on the Gary Marcus side. It's about 3 weeks ago. I've done quite a lot of research since. But I've started increasingly to go more to the sort of AI techno-optimist side. And one of the reasons actually is I recall sort of on LinkedIn, you know, maybe 6 months, a year ago, people would always be posting something like, oh, my LLM's thick. It can't do any maths, right? It's really silly. It can't do basic maths when it's sucked up the whole of the world's knowledge, but it can't do maths. But it's quite good at it now. In general, okay, if you give it a simple maths problem or some long division or whatever, it would tend to get those right now. And this, from what I understand, is due to improvements in post-training. And essentially, they can overcome this by teaching the system to use a step-by-step arithmetic to correct its intermediate mistakes, steps if it's made a mistake, and to learn clear formatting of calculations. So this has taught the LLMs to slow down and use a method when answering these questions. Essentially, you know, if it's long division, the LLM is quite good at simple calculations, and if you break it down to the simple calculations, it can actually get these things right. For longer and longer calculations, they sort of fail a bit. They can make mistakes that can iterate and become cumulative and fail. And I thought this was really interesting, particularly because actually, I was wondering why the hell people were expecting LLMs to be good at maths. Because as an LLM, I wouldn't expect it to necessarily be good at maths. But the fact that they seem to have cracked this, I think, is quite encouraging. That's just my view. Okay, benchmarking contamination. I just wanted to address that issue. Well, there is some evidence for contamination. So in this paper here, they looked at the performance on, this is a maths test, in 2025 and 2024. The important thing to understand here is that the dashed line is basically human performance. It's the percentiles of human performance from 0 to 100, and it straddles the identity line. That means that these two tests for human performers are basically equal difficulty. But what you find is that for these blue dots, which are models released before the 2025 version, they often exceed performance on the 2024. And that, I think, the fact that it's above the identity line is some evidence of some contamination. Now, it's not all the way up at 1. It's not necessarily a smoking gun to say that these models are only getting better because they're learning the exam, if you like. But there's some evidence of contamination, and it's something you have to be aware of. You know, it depends whether you trust the companies or not to do this properly. But also contamination it can be accidental, right? They're sucking up a lot of information. So if people are talking about these exams elsewhere, even if they're not picking up the data from the exam, there might be accidental contamination, but, you know, I don't think it's a smoking gun. I think it's an issue, not a smoking gun. Okay, I don't know how long this took, but I took a lot of slides out before because, so here are my closing remarks. So on CapEx spend, so to justify current CapEx spend requires rapid revenue growth. If the enterprise adoption, in particular, I think it's the enterprise adoption that they're going to need to get these revenues. If that takes a long time to come about, possibly because of these problems that AI models do have with reliabilities and hallucinations and confabulation, that is a substantial risk to certainly the S&P 500, those companies, and probably the global economy in general. I think if you look at America, a lot of their spending, it's quite a weak economy, but a lot of their spending is coming from people with stocks and shares in the S&P 500 that are feeling quite rich at the moment. That's what's powering the US economy at the moment. So I think there is substantive risk there. I would argue that linear scaling still has some way to go. I'm fairly convinced by that. I think these models are going to get better. I think on the benchmarks, they're going to exceed human performance. I'm not worried about that at all. You could argue that those benchmarks are somewhat narrowly defined, but I've been fairly convinced that is going to happen in a couple of years. So yeah, they continue to progress on the benchmarks. Now, LLMs often learn the answer. There's no doubt these criticisms that are being provided of LLMs are incredibly true. They're valid and they do lots of stupid stuff, and we know they just go on and on and on in my code base, and when I get it to write some notes, they just go on and on and on. They have all of these problems, but I guess what I've been convinced is that the post-training really can allow them to think a little bit better. And I expect this sort of whack-a-mole. I think it's actually quite productive having these people, maybe not Gary Marcus, but all these other papers that criticize how the AI models work. Well, you know, they can take those criticisms and they can find a solution, and maybe they can carry on, and we will see continued improvements. But I think back to your initial point, right? You're still skeptical about, you know, all the issues these LLMs have. I guess what's made me more confident is just this idea that linear scaling, if you have another order of magnitude worth of data there, it will enable these models to not necessarily solve that. Well, yes, another order of magnitude of power, it just seems to be going a long way. And this idea of linear scaling and the criticisms provided to it, that's not new. It's not the last couple of years, right? That's 10 years. They've been bursting through these criticisms. You know, it used to be, you won't be able to understand the structure of a phrase or whatever. You know, they burst through that. So I'm generally more positive than I started 2 or 3 weeks ago when I started looking into this. All right, thank you.
Amazing. Thanks, Dave, for that was a thrilling presentation, actually. And thanks for falsifying my point. I was just trying to have some more opening remarks. I wasn't trying to, undermine the legitimacy of AI, but that's all right.
Well, you know what? When I started this, I was hoping. What I was looking for is smoking guns to go. No, these things are they're gonna flatline. Because I love these models, right? When I'm doing the coding, like, it's so much quicker. Yeah, I get frustrated when they go on and don't do exactly what I want. But often I find actually it's my fault for giving it a bad prompt or not giving it the context or just being impatient. But the speed at which I can work today is rapid. And in fact, I'm working with a couple of colleagues at the moment, and we're building a sort of no-code database, if you like, for deploying various applications, which has a very formalized code structure. And the AI just seems to be able to pick up, without any sort of prompts actually, from that code structure, you know, how to build a new system, how to deploy an API, all of these things, right? It's immensely powerful how it is. So I was sort of hoping to agree with you, but I've been pushed the other way. So,
all right, I'm sorry, Anders, no worries. So I think we can pass to the questions, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if you're all right. So I think the first question is coming from Steve.
Hi, I just wanted to have a small clarification on the bubble aspect that you mentioned. Like previously, when you mentioned web, railways and stuff, it wasn't like a complete. When you say like Gen AI, it is a change in the way, the improvement in which we are processing tasks, like web, railways, all of that was an information retrieval system. Railways helped connect stuff more, but with Gen AI, it's a completely different aspect is what I feel. If we are actually able to achieve AGI, a lot of different tasks are going to completely disappear, which means that this essentially cannot be a bubble from my aspect. What do you think about that point?
Well, I think that's exactly right. I think that the spend that OpenAI and others are making is based on the assumption that linear scaling will continue and you'll achieve something like AGI. Now, I didn't talk about AGI because, well, I have no idea whether we'll get there or whether we'll hit some kind of limit. But that is sort of the bet that they're going for, I think. And I made the comparison with Anthropic because, look, they're 2 or 3 years, arguably 2 or 3 years away from being a profitable company, sort of a Netflix-sized company. Their growth is through enterprise, reliable customers. That's a potential business model that they could have gone down. But no, people believe we need more compute. And I think it's this linear scaling thing that's there. So, if there is a slowdown, like Gary Marcus suggests, and his argument is basically like, ChatGPT 3 was great, ChatGPT 4 was improved, ChatGPT 5, does seem to have some issues, and maybe our subjective judgment of those is that they're not continuing to improve. I don't. Well, why don't we do a survey here? Who thinks they are continuing at a sort of? Who thinks the algorithms they're using have slowed down here in their improvements over the last 6 months? Say, put your hand up. Who thinks here that the development, the frontier models in AI, or the models that maybe you're using to help with your code, have slowed down in their advances over the last 6 months compared to the previous 6 months? Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry. We use Gemini a lot of work, and they're having some pretty serious scaling issues. But I think when I do get it to work, presumably because no one else is using it, it is better. But I mean, Google's a compute powerhouse, right? They're the biggest ISP in the world, all that malarkey. But they're having to really throttle even pro usage for the paid plans. That's the only thing I've noticed. It's getting smarter, but it's getting less available for me.
Yeah, although that's a technical problem that you're hitting, isn't that? Not a sort of, they're not just, not that they're improving theoretically, right? So anyway, most people seem to think they were increasing. So maybe if I phrased the question the other way, I'd get a different answer. But there we go.
I guess there's a question from online. Yeah. Let's prioritize the online audience. Yeah.
Thank you. This is referencing the Tom Cruise slide. Someone's mother might have more than one son. 33% look suspiciously like the mother in question might have 3 sons.
Yeah, but he's still her son. Yeah.
Maybe the question.
I don't think it's an issue from the theoretical perspective.
I think, yeah. So.
Thank you. I'd just like to ask about like data licensing ownership and how they're absorbing all this data that should they or shouldn't they be using? Can they? Are they checking the rights? All that sort of stuff, which I have to do that in my day job. Otherwise, we get in trouble. Yeah. How do you feel that aspect of it is going to fit into this?
I imagine what they're doing is ignoring all of that. When I was doing this talk and I was asking ChatGPT to help me out, it was constantly giving me links to articles I couldn't read because they're behind paywalls. It's obviously scrape the data from there. Is that legal? I'm not a lawyer. I suspect the approach they're going is it's going to be very difficult for people to, when they train these models initially, they can train them on whatever they want because you can't necessarily identify what they've been trained on. So my suspicion is they're breaking the law. I know that some companies, I think this was on the Page 94 podcast I was listening to yesterday, some companies like Gardin are being paid by the LLMs, with companies, not the LLMs, by the companies that run those to use their news content so they can present that when you ask a question. And that seems like a good solution. Whether they're getting much money, I don't know. And I don't fully know the answer to your question.
Thank you for your talk, David. I really enjoyed it. I just wanted to jump in on the conversation about the copyright issues. I think it's likely that in your example, the LLM is quoting a Twitter account that of someone who read the article, and is saying, "Here's a link to an article that says something." So, would you think it's a violation of copyright to read articles behind paywall and tweet about it?
No, apparently not. Apparently, if there's a fact in an article and you reproduce that fact, that's fine. You can't necessarily reproduce their figure. I took some figures out of this talk, a Financial Times figure, because I didn't think I could reproduce it, or the AI told me I couldn't reproduce it. But it did say, no, if you take those facts and you take those numbers and you make your own graph, and I made my own graph on here, it's fine. So it's complicated, right? And maybe that's a way they can get around it.
Anyone else?
Yeah, it feels like there's going to be some landmark legal cases. I think that's my gut feeling on this, and that might impact that that slope.
Yeah, watch out for it. I think it's interesting. The only thing I'd say to that is, you look at the American economy, it's got monopolies. The Mag 7, they're near monopolies on what they do. The Europeans have allowed that to happen, actually. The Americans have allowed that to happen. And I think it's in the America's interest, actually. Monopolies are fine as long as you've got the monopolies. They're bad for the rest of the economy. So they're not necessarily motivated in America to do that legislation. I think that's bad for the American population. I think it might be bad for the rest of the populations to allow these monopolistic behaviors, but that does seem to be what is allowed at the moment. So yeah.
Thank you for the talk. It was very, very interesting. One of the aspects of risk that you alluded to earlier was about the adoption of LLMs and AI models. So leaving aside whether the LLMs are improving or not, isn't the fact that there seems to be bad publicity at this time about the performance of LLMs a risk to the future in terms of take-up and adoption by other industries?
Yeah, definitely. And I didn't focus on that point. And originally I wanted to focus on that. And that's, you know, there are these other benchmarks, for example, hallucination benchmarks, or other benchmarks that simply look at all of these benchmarks in which, you know, the LLMs have exceeded them. For the most part, they're saturated at 90 or 95%, and just looks for whether any of these are getting all of these answers correct yet. And none of them are, but some of them are getting close. So I think that reliability issue is a big one. And there's a phrase, I think, the long tail of reliability, that sort of relates to, you know, automatic cars. You know, they're not on the roads yet, or at least not mass use on the roads. And that's because they are hitting edge case situations where the cars just do something a bit crazy, because the world's a complex, difficult place. And that is sort of limiting the adoption, because it's not just the statistics of how many crashes there are, but if you can't diagnose that crash, you know, that's a problem with the regulators. Regulatory, approval is another big one on these. You want to use these systems in the world of finance, anywhere where there's existing regulations, that could slow uptake. And I think that's a massive risk. In fact, I expect it. My bet is that, the uptake by enterprise will be slow, and there will be a bit of a bubble popping or deflating. And that's my bet anyway. Yeah.
Any other question? Okay, Oscar.
Is it a fair summary then of your position that you are somewhat skeptical and skeptical of the future of these tech giants and AI companies, but from the end of your talk, positivist or optimist about the capabilities of the technologies themselves, independent of their current stewards? Is that fair?
Yeah, pretty much, because both things can be true, right? You can reach AGI, let's say, and there can be a boom and bust, just like with the railroads and like the dot-com bubble. Both those two things can be true. It's a matter of timing. As with business, people say it's always a matter of timing, right? So yeah, that's precisely my view. Yeah.
Is that pretty everyone, or? Do we have another question? Any serious question from online? No? Any joke? No, nothing.
I have one just quick comment, actually.
All right.
The one thing I'd love to know more about as I was doing this research, because I'm not an AI researcher, but was just that final slide I had where talking about how they've managed to train these things to get better at, say, long division. I think that is a topic I'd like to understand better. These post-training methods and how they've managed to get around all of these problems. I think that's what I'd like to understand to really get a feel for actually how positive you should be for how these things go forward. So if anybody is an expert in that area, I'd invite you to give a talk.
I can give you a slight insight on that. So recently, like the introduction of FCP servers, there's like specialized tools which these models can call for specific tasks. So when the LLM looks at a certain context, it automatically calls that tool, which executes a set of steps, which allows it to structure how it will solve a problem, which helps it get to the solution.
I know there is a big problem with the MCP servers, which is the amount of like tools or options or API options, if you like, they can call. As they sort of scale, there's a linear fail rate with the LLMs about picking the right tool. In part, I think the talk I listened to is that it's in part due to some failures in the Python library. But I think that's also just reminded me that's a good example of where they do struggle a little bit as well. Yeah.
Oh, hi. I just wondered about before Christmas, Grok 4 dropped and Elon got in trouble, and it seemed like Ofcom went crazy, and Kimistara, all of these Malaysia banned it, Grok, and other countries that were more conservative. And do you think that Elon Musk was sort of doing something that everyone wanted to kind of do because he gets like a green card because he's kind of autistic and creative and crazy, or do you think that might be a sign of something that might happen next? What do you see with that kind of like roadmap? Because that was quite a scene.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, wow. I mean, the one comment I'd have is that Dario of Anthropic, he left because he was upset about the guardrails they were putting on. And so that might be a reflection of Elon and how he runs his companies. He runs high risk, right? But I mean, that is a massive topic, isn't it? And it's not just that, but it's also, how to make a dirty bomb, so on and so forth. The ability of bad players to get access to that information if the guardrails aren't there. And actually, it's a fair question, right? Because will they ever get there, right? Because people cite these examples where you just add a few spelling mistakes to the example and you ask how to build, I don't know, a dirty bomb. I've not done that. And you can get around their internal controls. And though in many ways, I think it's almost the same point as the maths example, right? So with the maths example, when you ask maths questions, they used to hallucinate a lot. And then this post-training regime came around and taught them how to think, if you like, with the chain of thought example. So that's an example of maybe where they can improve the stability of the algorithms. And I think that's the point. The stability of the algorithms is key. And if you see increases in that, I think that's where you go, wow, the adoption could be quite big. But until you see more stability in that, it's a massive risk. It's a massive risk. Yeah.
All right. So that was a very nice discussion about why we should be too optimistic of the state of the AI, and I think I am kind of convinced, but I still have some doubts. But I'm gonna keep my question for the pub. All right, thanks, Dave, for the amazing talk and also Q&A session. I think you convinced most of the audience to be being optimistic about the AI. But if there are still pessimistic people around the audience, I think you should stay for pub. Anywho, so I think, yeah, we need to leave before 8 p.m. Here because there was a Champions League game at 8 p.m. So I don't want to miss it. Nah, I'm kidding. Because yeah, the venue is needs to be closed. But before closing remarks, I just want to thanks to the such an audience with such a vibrant community and interactive one. I also want to ask thanks for the online audience, although there are some humorous ones already hijacked the conversation a little bit. I want to thank the creator of this amazing community, the framework, Oscar Holm, once again, because he was he created it and keep it since 2018 in the last 8 years. So let's give a warm hand for Oscar. Also, I should say thanks to the provider of this amazing venue. I mean, they were supporting the Brighton Data Forum, I think, since it is, emergence, but they are keep providing a venue and making it running for the next year as well. So let's give a warm hand for the Eagle Labs and Platform 9 as well. And thanks to our main sponsor for written analytics and also our general sponsor, Silicon Brighton as well. And without them, we couldn't provide the refreshments and drinks. So other than networking and socializing, we will also have a kind of proper dinner before going to pub, so we don't get too drunk. So that's a definite win. And let's give a warm hands for our sponsors as well. All right, I think that's pretty everything. And if there is nothing from online, I'm gonna close the live station and I will just let you know we are heading to the pub called Earth and Stars. I never been there, but if you want to keep the conversation or if you want to just chit chat, come along, we will be there waiting you. Thanks everyone, cheers.